Well, you may have heard of a doula, a person who gives physical and emotional support to a woman and her partner before, during and after childbirth. Well, doulas don't only help at the start of life, they can also help at the end too. And with our ageing population, some people think more and more of us will be needing this kind of help as we near our final days. And joining us to explain this is Helen Callanan, who is an end-of-life doula and trainer. Helen, good morning. Welcome to Studio 2.
Thank you. Thanks. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you.
Excuse my ignorance, but I have never heard of an end-of-life doula. What is it?
Well, you're not on your own. An end-of-life doula is, you mentioned birth doula before.
Yes.
So an end-of-life doula is basically providing the same services. So support, emotional support, practical support, resources, education, options, like walking alongside someone at a difficult time of transition.
So what's the difference between a doula and a carer or a nurse?
Well, first of all, a carer often, if it's not a family member, is often has some training in terms of they're providing practical, hands-on physical care of some description. A nurse, of course, has more of a clinical and nursing background. So they're providing medical and nursing support. A doula, on the other hand, non-medical. So we're providing more emotional and educational support to people, allowing them to actually make the choices in their life that match their values, rather than trying to send them down a particular track. It's like, you're the expert in your life. You know, what is it that you want? What are the values you have? What are the needs you have, or your family? And my job then would be to support you in fulfilling those.
Well, it's actually a very good idea. But how do you, I imagine it would be a tricky sort of conversation to have with someone who might be dying but might not want to admit it. When do you have to be terminally ill to get an end-of-life doula, or how would you sort of go about getting one?
Well, I call myself an end-of-life doula, and that's because I don't only work with death. Like, I have clients that come to me who there is no diagnosis. They've actually come because they want to put their plans in place. Oh. They want to have their conversations. They want to know, what are my options? You know, towards the end of my life. How can I take care of my body? What can I put in place for my family? So it's about providing that support. Then, and also I've worked with people right at the very end, and when they're in that vigil time and that sacred time at end of life, and then into bereavement. So like, it's really a very long, full spectrum role where you can be the one to accompany someone on this whole big journey, whereas a lot of other people drop off along the way.
Are you more in demand for people who die at home, I suppose, rather than in hospital?
Look, interestingly, I would have to say, the stats say that between 70 and 80% of people say they want to die at home. The reality is 14% do. Oh. Right? So now that can be a range of things. That can be because maybe the person's medical or nursing needs are so great that they need to receive care in hospital. It may well be that the family are exhausted and don't feel like they're coping, so it may be more appropriate. So there's a lot of different things. But I've worked in hospitals, in PAL care units, in aged care facilities, in homes, everywhere. To me, having a doula is like having a champion there alongside you, wherever you are.
Having a doula, because I would much rather die at home, obviously. I would rather live at home, die at home, and never leave the house, quite frankly. I'm going to die at home in about 40 years, hopefully. But I imagine having a doula would make it easier to be at home, because it means you wouldn't need the round-the-clock care from a family or a nurse, because you'd be filling that bit.
Well, the doulas, and it depends. Some doulas do provide that sort of actual care. Some don't. But I liken my role a bit like to an event planner. You know, when we're having our birth, when we're getting married, when we're having our retirement, when we're, you know, having some big event, we plan it. So having someone at home where an end-of-life doula can be great is like, okay, what do we need? What are the resources we need to have this happen? They can fill a lot of the gaps, because if you think about it, palliative care, essential. Can't do my job without great palliative care, because that's not my skill, you know, that's not my area. But I can be there in the times that the PAL care team isn't. And I can be providing support at all across the time that they need.
I guess what's really nice is that during a time when, especially if you're going through it for the first time, you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
And that you're there as an advocate for the family, because sometimes you're not in the right frame of mind to make good decisions because you're in terrible grief.
Yes. Well, that's absolutely true, Tash. And the other thing that happens too is that these days people don't know their options because this is often a scary topic. People don't know that they have all of these options, so education's key.
It's interesting now we've got the baby boomers, we've got a huge ageing population, we've got a generation that is used to making its own choices.
That's right.
And, you know, the generation that said we don't want to go to Vietnam is now saying we want to die how we want to die. We want to choose how we want to die. We've had WA just passed voluntary euthanasia laws, Victoria already has. Is that, do you think this will be something that is more in demand as people are choosing how and when they go?
Well, yeah, I do, because I think the reality is, you know, you may have heard of the term that's getting used, the silver tsunami, right? So it's this ageing population, right? There's this wave of ageing and death coming. It's a 10 out of 10 stat, right? So just on virtue of that alone, there'll never be enough PAL care beds, hospice beds, aged care beds, because we have to take death home again, like it did in our grandparents' age and our great-grandparents. They took care of their dying and their dead at home. That's what they all did. And so we have to, and as Libby Maloney from Natural Grace says, we've got to reverse pioneer. You know, we've got to claw back that past because we've lost our confidence and our competence in supporting people in our lives at home. And people are frightened, understandably. But by having knowledge and education and having someone there supporting you that's not as emotionally engaged as you were saying, that is someone who, you know, is a little bit outside, that is used to this, that is comfortable around death, makes an enormous, enormous difference.
I wish my radio career had an end-of-life doula. That would have really...
Helen, it's such an important topic, and thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. I really appreciate being able to.
Appreciate
Thank you so much.